Hi there, hello, salut, bonjour. I hope you're doing very well from wherever you're watching at this moment. As always, it's a unique privilege for me to connect with you as we try to make sense of events happening across the globe, especially in the Republic of Cameroon. But before I say anything, may I take this moment to thank you all for your continuous support and encouragement, and for taking the time to wish me well on my birthday. I don't take it for granted. Your messages went straight to my heart, and for those your prayers, again, may they go straight from your lips to God's ears. And as you know, Cameroon is really going through a lot, and we can't spare a moment without coming with updates. As always, as we do on this platform, we start with the updates off the top, and then we proceed to give you our analysis on the side, and then our editorial. Please continue to share this platform within your circles. Hit the like button so YouTube understands that it's good to share, and also recommend to other like-minded people that want to see well for Cameroon and also lovers of democracy. And if you just love a good conversation, a good civic education, a piece, or just a public discourse on any matter of interest, and as you comment, your comments are taken very seriously, and as we continue to be civil, respectful towards one another. I thank you all for that. Indeed, wherever you're watching from at this moment, I hope you're safe, grounded, and surrounded by people who remind you that Cameroon is bigger than any regime. Today is Sunday, November 23rd, and I update you that a very small country in the west of Africa has made a very big statement about us, the Gambia. Yes, the Gambia has confirmed that President-elect Issa Tchiroma Bakary is on its soil, alive, safe, and under protection on humanitarian grounds, while the region looks for a diplomatic way out of Cameroon's post-electoral crisis. Today, we're going to do three things, together of course. Walk through the factual updates, as we always do, talk about, the Gambia, Yaoundé, ENAM, the issues in Bafoussam, Ministry of Finance, give quick, sharp analysis as we move on, and end with a full editorial. Because if the state has been stolen, how do we make sure the Republic keeps moving? Let's start where the news broke loudest today, Banjul, the Gambia. The Gambian government says this very clearly. Issa Tchiroma Bakary is being hosted temporarily on humanitarian grounds, in the spirit of African solidarity, to ensure his safety while discussions continue with regional partners about a peaceful solution to Cameroon's crisis. They are not describing a fugitive. They are not describing an illegal immigrant. They are describing a political leader under protection. What does this mean in diplomatic language? It means at least three things. One, even outside our borders, everyone knows that the situation in Cameroon is a crisis, not just another election. Two, Gambia acknowledges that Tchiroma's life has been in danger. Remember the reports of attacks and arrests in the north in recent weeks. Three, there is now an African-level political file open on Cameroon. Let's get this straight. You don't host a neighbor's main opposition leader for humanitarian reasons without talking quietly to Abuja, to ECOWAS, or to the AU, the African Union. And this story becomes even more symbolic when you remember who is president of the Gambia, Adama Barrow. Barrow knows this script by heart. In 2017, he was sworn in Dakar, while Yahya Jammeh refused to accept defeat. Regional pressure, ECOWAS troops, and a few weeks later, Barrow came home and Jammeh left. The Guardian tonight, Issa Tchiroma is in Gambia, hosted by a man who once lived that same drama. An election claimed, a mandate denied, an exile that turned into a return. For those who think history never repeats itself, sometimes it doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. Not everyone sees Issa Tchiroma Bakary's presence in Gambia as a victory. We can tell you that for sure. Father Ludovic Lado reacted very strongly, saying in substance, I told you, Tchiroma can no longer accompany this revolution by taking refuge in another African country. You don't make a revolution with the petty political bourgeoisie. That's a powerful, painful sentence. It reflects a frustration many feel. Again, our leaders leave, we stay with the bullets and the tear gas. But immediately, others push back with history. The Iranian Revolution had an Ayatollah in exile in France. De Gaulle was in London while fighting for France. Fidel Castro prepared part of his Cuban Revolution from Mexico. And another voice adds, yes, but they had foreign backing. They weren't alone. And that is key. Because this debate is important because it exposes two wounds at the same time. The wound of trust. Can we really trust political elites? The wound of abandonment. Why do those who speak for us end up protected abroad while we bury our dead at home? My take is simple. Exile does not automatically cancel a struggle, but exile without a clear strategy for those who remain on the ground becomes just another story of survival, not transformation. And that brings us to the second big update. What strategy now inside the institutions? Tchiroma's boycott and 30 years of wasted boycotts as we all know it. Because through his spokesperson, Barrister Alice Nkom, Issa Tchiroma has announced that he will not participate in the 2025 regional elections, nor in the 2026 municipal and legislative elections. Immediately, many of you heard deja vu. I know that. Fru Ndi and the SDF boycotting in the 90s, Professor Maurice Kamto and the MRSA boycotting in 2020, now Tchiroma and the FSNC after a contested presidential election in 2025. Okay, granted, for over 30 years, opposition parties have tried to use the boycott as a weapon. Of course, sometimes it was a moral stand. We cannot legitimize a fraudulent process, sure. And other times it was a tactical move. We will delegitimize the parliament so the world sees the farce. But here is the hard truth. These boycotts have really produced a united, coherent, durable opposition bloc. They have often left us with a parliament and councils almost entirely in the hands of the ruling CPDM party. Of course, we cannot end there because we must ask the hard question. So, what happens when you have elections contested, an opposition leader in exile, and now a boycott of upcoming polls? Some say the answer is simple. You risk having a power vacuum on the opposition side, just when the country needs structured, disciplined, credible alternative leadership the most. And yet, the street is not empty. The youth are not quiet either. They are facing another battlefield, the battlefield of merit and opportunity. And that takes us into our third item, ENAM, IRIC, and the assassination of merit. While privileged families secure their spots in ENAM, IRIC, and the other elite schools, thousands of young Cameroonians watch another list come out and realize this republic was not designed for me. And this is captured very well by other Cameroonians as they've been taken to social media. They say your destiny is alcohol, revival churches, unemployment, or the dangerous road of irregular migration. The other door the regime opens is the door of the army, not to honor you, but to send you against your own people when they protest. While the regime in office tries to defend the meritocracy of these exams. And in all fairness, there are many Cameroonians that have gone into these institutions without bribing anyone, without having any godfather or godmother, without having, to go through the different hoops that we hear from other critics. But nonetheless, we do know that the majority of Cameroonians cannot access these institutions. just because a few have had the opportunity and the privilege through, we'll call it natural selection of life or some stroke of luck, it doesn't mean that the exceptions that validate the rules means that the rules don't apply. I do understand when many of you question, why now? Why talk about ENAM, IRIC, and so on? Why are so many Cameroonians on the web going off about these institutions that have been there for decades? And yet, it seems like very few were shining a spotlight on the issues. Of course, it's because 2025 is a turning point. Many Cameroonians are waking up from slumber, and many are gaining that awareness and consciousness to understand that it's not a privilege when there is a new public tap in your neighborhood. No, it's a right, because that is exactly why you pay taxes. That is exactly why the government has access to your raw materials. And therefore, an entrance examination into a public institution is supposed to be fair game. It's supposed to be meritocracy. And if it's anything short of meritocracy, then there is a problem. And as such, many Cameroonians are gaining the consciousness that they do deserve a lot more than they've been given for over 43 years. You saw it when the DOs, the SDOs went down to lock people's shops. You saw them protest and tell the SDO that, no, I know my rights. I have a right to open or to close. And if I say my safety is at risk, you are not going to protect me. And even when a public tap is installed in your neighborhood, let me take that example. Most times you will hear an elite try to take credit. No, they can't take credit for something that is for the good of the public and which is taxpayers' money. Because the government in office, they have access to the treasury and the minerals that the country generates, or the resources that the country generates from the sale of minerals and other raw materials that are given by Mother Nature. So it's been for so long that Cameroonians believed that the ruling CPDM party elites that will come and flaunt the success of, oh, I did this, I built a bridge in my village. No, an elite cannot build a bridge in their village. It's supposed to be the government. And if the government cannot do it, it's a failure on the part of the government. Because we do know places where there have been parliamentarians in government, people in high offices, ministers, prime ministers, and what have you. And if you go to their villages, they themselves, when they go there to campaign for the same CPDM party that they represent, it's a shame to see them pack their big Land Rovers. Even though they have Land Rovers, 4x4s, they still have to pack it and hop on bikes and also trek long distances to get to their own local headquarters. It's a shame. You even have elites that have decided to look for different zones in the urban centers and form a new base and call that their home. It's a shame. So when we talk about ENAM, we're talking about ENAM because many believe that it's as if those in office are using their children to perpetuate the cycle. They are trying to promote the system in such a way that even when Biya will no longer be there, when President Biya will be out of office, the system will still function. Because no one would have believed that after knowing what President Biya knew under President Ahijo, that he would do worse. And today, Cameroon is where it is. And therefore, the younger generation is shining a spotlight on the matter relating to ENAM and IRIC and all these institutions that are responsible to train the leaders of tomorrow. The Cameroonians are very aware that these institutions that are sidelining the children of those that are considered to be poor, of those that are not considered to be connected to the ruling class, or that come from families where they believe that there could be some form of dissent in their ranks. Those families that are excluded to the benefit of those that are in office, where their kids are admitted without merit. And it's because of all this that you hear sharp critics, those who say they know how these entrance exams work. They say it's because of leaked questions, ethnic and clan networks, phone calls from people above. Meanwhile, the young people who have done everything right, studied hard, passed all the mock exams, and believed in merit, yet are left outside the gate. Now, put that next to the post-electoral violence, where UN-linked sources speak of dozens of civilians killed by security forces during protests after the election's results. So, here is the picture. You block youth from ENAM. You block them from parliament by rigging elections. And when they go to the street to shout, you meet them with bullets. At some point, that's not just bad governance. That's a system of social assassination. And when a system feels threatened, it does not only send the army, sometimes it sends your neighbor. And that takes us to the fourth update on this piece that has to do with security and vigilante committees that we hear are being set up in different communities, especially in Bafoussam, where the divisional officer, Ousmanu Daouda, has officially reactivated vigilance committees in all neighborhoods. He's asking them to intensify collaboration with security forces to maintain public safety. In a tense context, on paper, vigilante groups can help communities fight crime. In practice, especially in a post-electoral crisis, they can also become eyes and ears for repression, tools to identify dissenters, ways to outsource intimidation to civilians. The regime has everything in place. The pattern is becoming clear. Protesters killed or injured, opposition leaders chased, arrested, or pushed into exile. And then what do you have? Vigilance committees reactivated for security, in quotes. Therefore, the message to ordinary Cameroonians is simple. Stay in your lane, or we will find you at the polling station, at ENAM, in your neighborhood, even at the vigil. But even in this climate, the regime has something else to offer. Not reforms, not a Marshall Plan for youth. Job offers. Yes, job offers from the IMF, International Monetary Fund. And we can tell you about the IMF opportunities versus ENAM, which you've heard that has been repurposed or retaken over by the Cameroonian government. But that is a country that refuses to invest in its own son. And we'll tell you how that stacks with the communique from the Ministry of Finance, talking about the IMF Economics Program, IMF Fund Internship Program, IMF Research Analyst Program, with deadlines in November, December, and January. It's a good start that talented Cameroonians can apply for these jobs. The IMF is opening a door for African economists, researchers, and analysts. But look at the contradiction. We are encouraging our best brains to polish their CVs for Washington and the IMF. Good and fine. While at home, in a country bathed in sunlight, we still have no serious national solar strategy. No large-scale solar plans changing daily life for ordinary people in Cameroon. Because, might I inform you that there is a community in Mutengene in the southwest region of Cameroon where people haven't had electricity steady for 7 to 8 months now. And there is a popular video where you can see the mayor come down and other people in the community sit around trying to protest at the entrance of the offices of ENAM, trying to ask them to provide an update on the status of their electricity supply. So when we hear that the government of Cameroon is taking back ownership, first is privatization, no, now we're taking it back, nationalization, all of that. Again, these are things that you would continue to see because under this climate, the government is going helter-skelter, trying to put band-aids, trying to do knee-jerk reactions, showing the people that, no, we're working hard, we're trying to make things happen. No, we've not done it for 43 years, we want to do it in 7 years. In fact, we want to do it in a few months. However, some energy experts and other analysts are speaking up. For example, Vincent Konjok, an energy expert, calls the nationalization of ENAM a bad deal in terms of cost, timing, and the situation of the company. And he reminds us that the 2001 privatization of Sonel was already a monumental error. So for over 20 years, between privatization and renationalization, what have we really built? Not a reliable grid, not stable prices, not a national solar revolution. Put all of this together, a stolen election for many citizens, an opposition in exile and in boycott, a youth blocked at ENAM, vigilante committees watching the streets, and an energy sector that burns diesel instead of using the sun. This is no longer just politics. This is the architecture of a stolen state. And that brings us to the editorial, which is where we put it all together. The state has been stolen, but the republic is moving. Let's call things by their names. Officially, the Constitutional Council says Paul Biya has been re-elected with about 53.66% of the vote. But for millions of Cameroonians, that figure has no legitimacy. Parallel tallies, civic groups, and opposition teams speak of Issa Tchiroma Bakary leading by 20 to 30 points, around 54 to 57%. That is why protesters went out in the first place. That's why security forces fired. That's why the UN is counting bodies. That's why the Gambia is now hosting Tchiroma on humanitarian grounds. So yes, we can say it. The state has been stolen. But that is not the end of the sentence. The rest of the sentence is, but the republic is moving. The state has been stolen, but the republic is moving. The republic moves every time a young person rejects the lie that their only future is alcohol, fake prophecies, and migration. That a teacher explains to students what Article 113 of the Electoral Code really says. That a priest, an imam, a pastor chooses truth over comfort. That a journalist risks their own job to say the regime has legality but no legitimacy. You know, that a parent tells their child, you have the right to live in a country where ENAM is merit, not mafia. And now, where do we go from here, as we always ask at the end of every editorial? First, we stop normalizing this situation. A 92-year-old president keeping power through fear, fraud, and force is not stability. It is a slow collapse. Second, we stop believing that boycotts alone will save us. Without a united front, clear strategy, and real work at the base, boycotts become just another way to disappear from the field. Third, we invest in non-violent, disciplined, organized resistance. Civic education, legal challenges, documentation of abuses, building local committees that defend rights, not denounce neighbors. History shows that regimes built on fear and fraud always look invincible until they suddenly are not. Jammeh looked invincible until Barrow took his oath in Dakar and came home. The Guardian today, Tchiroma is in Gambia, not in Itudi. That is a brutal reality. But tomorrow is not written only in Banjul, Abuja, or New York. It is written in the way you tell the truth to your family, in the way you refuse to participate in rigged competitions and corrupt networks, in the way you protect protesters' rights, even if you don't like their candidate. You know, the state, for now, sits on stolen ground. The republic, meanwhile, is moving in taxis, in classrooms, on WhatsApp groups, on Facebook, as I like to call it, in refugee camps in exile, in the streets of Douala, Bafoussam, Garwa, Bafang. But our job, yours and mine, is to make sure that when history turns, it finds a people ready, informed, disciplined, and united enough to rebuild something better than what was stolen. And therefore, thank you so much for staying to the end. If you did, thank you for watching. If this conversation helped you to see things a little clearer, share it, debate it, correct it where you have better information, but don't switch off. The story is not over. We will keep following the facts, and together we will keep searching for the path that leads not just to a new president, but to a new republic, the Third Republic of Cameroon. And as always, stay vigilant, stay informed, stay away from propaganda, continue to subscribe, to share, and to hit the thumbs up if you do like this particular piece and all the others. And until the next one, may God bless Cameroon.